obviously Steve, Rach, your wonderful state chairman, the judge. They put a lot into this, so we really appreciate you guys showing up. My name is Jack Sullivan, Olympia judge, national judge, pro judge, all the judging and all the things. And I've also been a competitor. I never earned my pro card. Came pretty damn close, but never happened. I really spent some time on the stage without a doubt. This is Ms. Becky Clausen. She can give you her introduction.
Pretty much the same for judging. And I did compete as well for about 10 years. Turned pro in figure and then transitioned to pro bikini. I spent some time on stage as well.
Sir Sarek, Olympia judge, IFBB Pro head judge, NPC judge. Competed, started a men's physique, believe it or not, in 2010 when a men's physique started out with the baggy shorts. And had a hell of a time competing. It was amazing and it was a great time on the stage, and it's also great growing into judging, and I also promote some of the shows in South Florida. If you know, the Caribbean Grand Prix, also in the Bahamas. Jack was actually judging 2 years ago, right?
Yes, great show. Great show.
And all the Grand Prix in South Florida, Oakland Grand Prix and Florida Grand Prix. And in all of the shows I have the Master Pros, and I emphasize more on the Masters to compete and stay healthy and live longer, live fit, and be in this amazing society.
And so, I mean, this opportunity here is really, a chance for us to connect with you and give you guys kind of objective, platform to ask the questions that you want and to get some legitimate feedback and to give you a little bit more information on what we're doing with the Masters shows and what that's leading to. Obviously, you guys have all seen the announcement with the Masters Olympia taking place in Tokyo, Japan this year, which is an absolutely incredible opportunity. The three of us have had the opportunity to go to Tokyo and judge out there. The promoter Shoji, he skips no expense. The venue is, without a doubt, parallel to the Resorts World and any other high-level show that you've seen anywhere. They do it first class. They treat the athletes absolutely amazing. It's a really, really incredible experience. Something to certainly strive for. But we really want to start this out by opening up to you and hear what you guys have to say. You obviously all have competed. Is there any novice competitors? Anybody not been on stage yet? Okay, 2, all right. And so you guys were both at the previous seminar. All right, so you've heard my spiel on that. I won't take up any more of your time on the first time stuff. But you guys have been around, so you know what the experience is like. You have a better understanding of what, we're going for. But this is really an opportunity to kind of ask some really honest questions, and we'll give you some serious feedback.
I'd like to mention too, we do have a wonderful athlete here with us, Steve Jackson, who competed in the Masters Olympia. And she's Tokyo. Yeah.
Constance is also going to Tokyo.
For you to connect with, because they walk the walk, and especially you are as competitive in the Open as the Masters, and if there's a Masters and an Open, you're like right there, in the mix.
So hard, so a lot of work. They say work harder, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
That's not true. Smarter and harder.
Right. Double down.
But this is someone who's improved year over year too, so like age is not a limit. What's that?
I've stood in front of you at least a
Yes.
lot of times.
Yes, and I see you continually get better, and it's so impressive. So that's what it tells me, that there's just no limit to what you can do, and age really doesn't factor in. So, great example.
So now, are you going to be doing anything leading up to the Olympia? What are your plans?
I'll tell you that I'll be 55 when I play on stage again. So this is one of those smart things. Wait, so I'm gonna go to Tokyo. And then when I get off the plane, I'll see how I feel. I'll definitely come back and work hard.
Okay, good.
But I think I should wait, work on my back. When the judges give you feedback, sometimes it's hard. When you don't do as well as you think you should, take the feedback seriously. And because I am older and I do compete on the gotta give yourself time, you have to be patient, for sure.
It's a lot harder to maintain muscle mass the older that we get. And so giving yourself more time to prep is very, very important. And trying to rush this at any age is challenging, but try to do it as we get older. Your body's just not going to respond as well as you want it to. So taking that approach is definitely 100% the right way to do it. And it's obviously worked really well for you.
I think that's something good to say about masters too for women. I think it can be an advantage to be like in the more muscular divisions, like with wellness, you need legs, figure, you need back and everything, and upper body, which is hard for women to build. Over time, you can build that, and sometimes it's not until you're masters that you have that level of completeness and density. I know when I was competing figure, my coach was like, it doesn't matter if you hit that age, you're not competing masters. Those girls are just complete and dense, and you really won't stand well next to them. So I think it's an advantage, especially in the more muscular divisions, to have some age and training as far as women, because we don't put on muscle weights.
Well, you see it both in figure, women's physique, obviously women's bodybuilding as well, that, typically the women who are doing really well at a very high level, they're not super young. They've been spending the time in the weight room, they've paid their dues, they've allowed their body to develop over time, like Becky had said. Because again, you can't rush, developing muscle. And the reality is, if you do that, no matter what you take or what else is going on, it's honestly just going to diminish a lot sooner than you realize and put your body under more stress. It's not going to give you the look and the aesthetic that you want anyways. One of the things that we say as judges all the time is we love a physique that doesn't look forced, especially on a female. It doesn't matter whether it's figure, whether it's women's physique, even bodybuilding. Like when it looks forced and manufactured to a degree, it's not a very pleasing aesthetic look. That's not what we're going for. Stress, imbalances, you can see that it doesn't agree with the body.
Skin tone, I think, is a big one.
100%. Not to pick on wellness athletes, but what we've seen over the last 2 years is some of these girls push it a little bit too hard, really trying to grow their legs a little bit too big. When you look at Isa, Franciella, they clearly have the right muscular development, but it kind of looks like they woke out of bed and looking like that. Like they didn't try to cram and crush and do everything under the sun to force that physique to look that way. And I think that really goes a long, long ways in the women's divisions, and that's something that, Tyler is really focused on, is keeping an aesthetically pleasing, beautiful, feminine look. No matter what the division is, across any of the women's divisions, is, we want it to be something that's very pleasing and attractive and feminine at the same time. Us ugly guys, we can get away with a forced, kind of manufactured look. But even still, even for the guys, all jokes aside, clearly there's been a big shift in the judging over the last 5 to 10 years. And since Tyler has come on, not yet, hands down in the back. But there's clearly been, a huge change in direction as far as that goes. It's no longer who's the biggest and hardest. It's if you don't have a tapered waist, if you don't have good clean lines. Yeah, if you don't have a tapered waist, good clean lines, male or female, you're not going to do well in this. And typically that's what you see, is that when you're rushing that process, there's stomach distension, there's skin issues, you see all those things on stage, and the body will show itself in different ways, whether it's a skin issue, hair issue, digestive issues, things like that. And that's not what we're going for. And so we were just telling the novice athletes next door that, don't rush this process, even as a pro, especially as a pro. The reality is the industry has changed where people can earn pro cards more quickly than they could back when we were competing, right? Back in our day, they were giving out 5 to 10 pro cards a year. Now they're giving out, a couple hundred, and there's pros and cons to that without a doubt, and that's not the conversation. But with that, a lot of people are earning their pro cards and they're still a little underdeveloped as a pro goes. And so then they get to a pro stage, they realize that they are underdeveloped, and all of a sudden they want to do anything under the sun they can to develop that physique. And they push too hard, they stress their bodies out too much. And again, it doesn't get the response that you want, it doesn't give you the look that you want. And if it does, it's very for a short time, because your body can only sustain so much stress anyways. And the worst thing is that we see you for 1 or 2 shows, and then we never see you again, because you push too hard and stretch your body way too much. And that's the last thing that we want for you, So we want it to be, an enjoyable process that you're around for a long time. Because Because when you rush the process, you won't be here for a long time. And we'd rather see you enjoy that. And taking your time to do that, develop your body the right way, and enjoy that process. And that means you might take some L's along the way. That's okay. I mean, the reality is not everybody's going to earn a ticket to the Olympia. And even though you get to the Olympia, some of you are going to walk on the Olympia stage, get hit a couple poses, and not be in that first or second call out. I mean, that's the reality of this sport. But enjoying that process, being objective about it, being strategic about it, so that you are in a good state of mind, in a good state of health, to really reap the benefits of this is the most important thing. We all want to win, we all want to do as well as we can, but having that peace of mind to enjoy the process is paramount to your placing, without a doubt. And I mean, we've seen some of these stories where some of these athletes do too much too fast, and they may win a couple shows, but what happens a year or two after that, it's like, hey man, you push too much, and unfortunately now you're trying to recover from all this, and your body can't recover from it until you just shut it down. And I mean, some of us have been there. When you shut it down and try to start it back up, your body doesn't want anything to do with that either. So you just have to be very mindful of that. So I mean, to your point, your approach has been the right approach, and clearly has done well for the both of you. So kudos to that.
You're also going to see like the imbalances in the upper and lower body conditioning as you try to push it. Like the back is not going to be as hard as your legs. Body's just not going to work with you,
Yeah, and even on the muscular development side, not even just on the conditioning side, but everybody has weak points typically, and when you push too hard, typically your weak points become weaker because you're pushing too hard, and your body's strengths. If you're somebody that's very quad dominant and very chest dominant, and you're pushing super hard, those muscles are going to continue to grow exponentially more than your weak hamstrings. So from the front, your front most muscular and your side chest, look pretty good, but by the time you turn around, you got no hamstrings still. You still got no hamstrings. And that only happens by really, really taking your time and dialing in on the training, and maybe slowing down training on some of those other things, which you can't do unless you're really taking your time and being very strategic with that. All right, guys, good talk. But
Questions, do you guys have?
I just have one.
you only get one.
I know, I
Make it
promise.
really good.
So, as far as masters go, because the masters thing, how?
Casey, stand up and introduce yourself.
Yes.
Hi, so I'm Casey DeWan, Wellness IFBB Pro. I'm also going to Tokyo. I am in wellness, so. But with that being said, this question goes with muscle density. How much does a master's physique differ from a younger open physique? And you were talking about she's very competitive in both. That goes with the bigger we are, the muscle. But for someone like wellness, bikini, does the muscle technically get harder as we age? And does that look differ in masters versus open for like the classes like bikini, wellness, and men's physique?
So I think the big difference is skin tone, is what we, especially for women. And that's something, it can be hard to think about or discuss, but as we age, our skin gets a little bit thinner. For some of us, like myself, my skin is thicker, just happens to be. So as I aged, I looked a little bit leaner, which was good for me, but it can go overboard. Your skin tone is great. And I think that's where you can be competitive and open and in masters, especially for women. Once your skin gets a little bit thinner, you look a little harder, you can look grainy, yes. And it's a battle to combat that. So the muscularity is a plus, but you have to keep your skin, in good condition. So much goes into that with weight management, I think, throughout the year, so that your skin isn't, loose, so that it's as tight as possible. But that can be the battle that you fight, and I think that's what makes our masters competitors, the ones that really are competitive in the open. That's it. Like Jessica Wilson in bikini, great skin tone. She's in her 40s, and she looks a lot younger that way. And we're seeing more of that, like at North Americans masters, like the bikini classes, like the 50 and up is insane. And we're seeing really great examples of that. But I would say, in my opinion, that's the differentiation, is you have to work harder on the skin tone.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. I mean, there's a limited number of high-level athletes. In case you've been one, you've won open pro shows. Can't remember who judged that. And you as well, obviously, but that's the hard part. I mean, you know, you have the physique, you have the structure, you have the muscular development, but when you're doing some of these open shows, you're gonna be against girls that may have a similar structure, may have a similar build, male or female, but they don't have that real thin paper skin, and, you know, they don't bring that grainy look. And for men, it's a little bit different. In bodybuilding, it's a little bit different, but, you know, for females, you know, on the open side, that's gonna be an uphill battle, that's gonna be more challenging if you have that issue. And so like Becky said, maintaining that conditioning year-round will help that. But that's always going to be, you know, the challenge facing somebody who may have a very similar look next to you, but their skin, it just has a little bit more of a pleasing, youthful look. And this is, you know, a beauty pageant, right? And so that does play into it. And sometimes, you know, we've seen athletes get frustrated maybe because they have better conditioning and a little bit more development, but they don't have the same aesthetic, and the judging may go that other way. Well, that's the reality of the sport, right? And so being mindful of what shows you do, what lineups you find yourself in, and you all know this as athletes. I mean, it's kind of an any given Sunday type of thing. It's what physique are you doing, where are you standing next to, you know, who's the panel of judges, because that can have an effect as well. Even though the judging is pretty streamlined, there's 5 to 7 judges on there that are going to view things a little bit differently sometimes. And so you have to be mindful of that. You have to be objective and not let it destroy you mentally. And I get that it's very hard because you all are sacrificing a lot to get on stage. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It's a very challenging, alienating sport in all the different ways. But you have to be objective about that. And you have to take that feedback objectively. If you're somebody who's wired very emotionally, hey, guess what? You're being for a long ride doing this game. Because it's a challenge of it. You're being judged by other people. And, you know the game. You're being judged by your faults. And that's, you know, you're the crazy people who put yourselves up for this. So deal with it. But that's the reality of it. You know, so that's a really good question in finding that balance. But what's great now, and Serge talked about it, you know, he puts on a lot of shows really focused on masters. Tim's not in the room, but Tim, you know, he puts on, in my opinion, probably no offense, the best master shows in the game. Gary Hughes doing a lot of master shows, and that's something that, you know, we're putting a lot of emphasis on because, you know, you guys deserve that. You deserve that platform, and that's something that we want to get you as much as we can, and we want to do it at a high level. And again, the Masters Olympia is, you know, obviously speaks volumes on what we're trying to do as far as our organization goes, to give you guys the avenue to compete and to really be competitive and not be, you know, kind of what it was maybe 10 years ago, a kind of one-off thing, where now you guys are a big highlight of it, you know. And again, I mean, I'll use Tim as an example, but, you know, you come down to the Tampa Pro, or the Chicago Pro on a Thursday night or a Friday, or usually a Friday night when it's all masters, it's a great time. I mean, the energy is great, the athletes are incredible, it's super competitive, and the energy in the environment and the camaraderie and the community, and I mean, just the women backstage in particular are just having a great time, truly enjoying what they're doing. And as a judge, and I got to MC it this year the one day, apologies for any names I screwed up, but it was a lot of fun. It was a really, really good time. So it's really exciting to see that continue to evolve and grow. And promoters like Serge, Tim, and the rest are really making a path for you ladies and gentlemen to do that. So we're really excited to see that continue to grow.
I think the biggest part in the whole thing is just for you guys to have fun. All that is great, all these medals and awards, all that is good, but if you can't get the good vibe at the show, have fun, meet the great friends, and grow together, I think it's all relevant. You know, you have so many of those medals at the end, it's like, nothing is worth as much as if you have amazing time backstage, great time on a stage, be good with people, like have really good friends, good gym buddies. I think that goes way long than just winning. Try to focus on, I'm going to win this show.
Yeah, the experience is everything, and you know, the reality is there's only going to be so many Mr. and Mrs. Olympias. And you know, I wish everybody the best in going for that, but it's a very fleeting thing. So if you don't enjoy the process and the experience, man, you're missing out on this. You know, because that's what it's about. And at the end, that's all that you're going to have is the experience of it. And if you're going to be miserable about it, you're not going to really look back in enjoyment. And we see that a lot, unfortunately, because this is a very challenging thing. And we all know an athlete or two that didn't get the placement they want, and they go online and they bitch about it, and you make fools of yourselves. Let's be real serious about that. You make fools of yourselves, and you alienate yourself, and you build up this resentment. For what? You know, and listen, you know, we're not perfect. Sometimes the judge maybe didn't get it right or could have gone a different way. Not me. But it's a subjective judging criteria, and we have the criteria out there, no doubt, but it's still subjective in that regard. And there are 5 judges, and it's an any given Sunday type of thing. So, enjoy the experience and be objective about it, and try not to ruin it for yourself, to be honest.
And I would say from at a master's level, you guys have perspective that our younger athletes really don't. Like, a lot of you have careers, families, kids, maybe grandkids. You guys are rock stars in your real life. I call this is like fun. This is almost like fantasy. And it's a fun thing we do on weekends and occasionally, but in your day-to-day life, everyone's looking at you and impressed, especially in today's society. Like, you guys are more fit than most 20-year-olds. And that's so impressive. And for myself, whenever I didn't do well, because I was never a top-tier pro, I just thought, I spend most of my life with my gym family and my friends, and they all know how hard I work, and they know I'm healthy, and I've dedicated myself to this, and that's a win for me. Like, I go home to people who are impressed just with my effort. And I think if you can focus on that, it takes a lot off of the placing. The placing is not so important then.
I mean, listen, everybody knows being the older, fit, built person is a lot cooler than anybody else. But it is. Like, you're out and you see, maybe you see this guy walking with the overalls and the beard all jacked up. You're like, all right, so yeah, 100%. You had a question over here.
Yes, I'm going to video this so I can have my question. So I'm still an amateur. My first show was in August of last year, and I got into a car accident in September. So now I have like a mild bulging disc. Do you have any advice to get back to full training, especially now that I'm 50 and our bodies change? Is there any advice to get back to full training mode so I can go pro, which is my goal?
Well, I'm sorry that you went through that. And hopefully you're recovering well.
Thank you.
Not being medical professions, obviously seek the advice of a medical professional.
Yeah.
But I would say take your time and obviously be smart, don't rush it. I mean, there are so many opportunities now throughout the year to compete, whether you're a master's, an amateur, pro or not pro. I mean, there are shows every weekend, everywhere, all over the world. So don't rush it,
Okay.
and be smart with your training. If you're somebody who loved to squat and, you have a bulging disc, don't do that. And I mean, I think of Dorian Yates. You've heard his interviews. He'd always talk about, well, Tom Platt squatted. He never squatted. Dorian Yates used the leg press, and guy did okay for himself. So I think you just have to be smart and strategic and very, very patient, because there's not a trophy in the world that's worth blowing your back out. And there's always other shows.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think for the Masters, you have to take a little longer time to get ready. Don't get into a 12-week prep to get ready for a show. Give yourself 20 weeks, because along the way, you're gonna have the bumps, So don't try to do 6 and 8 week prep to get on the stage,
Yes. I'm basically working out 6 days a week. Trying to burn some fat. I've been doing the shedding of Starbucks, drinking lots of water, doing about an hour of cardio throughout the week. Is that the best ideal way of burning fat?
I mean, it sounds like you're taking the right steps to live a healthier lifestyle. When you talk about, setting yourself up for specific goals, specific weight loss, there's obviously a process to do that. And that's where you start to get a little bit more granular with your approach. My suggestion would be to get with, a coach. How many are coaches here? Raise your hand, coaches looking for clients. All right, we got a couple in the front here who are high-level pros. That they can help you dial that in. Because what happens, whether it's a contest prep or just general weight loss, your body doesn't necessarily want to lose weight once you get to a certain point. And it sounds like you're working through that low-hanging fruit where you're cutting out some of the sugary products, you're getting more active. So you've probably seen some, instant weight loss to some degree. Once you get the inflammation down and that immediate weight loss down, then it comes down to setting yourself up to, progressively burn body fat and hopefully build muscle at the same time. There's a very specific way to do that, and it has to be done in a progressive fashion as well. What you did for the first couple weeks or the first month isn't going to continue to work. I always use like the mailman analogy. A guy becomes a mailman, he's walking 10 miles a day, he's going to lose some weight. Once his body gets used to walking 10 miles a day, he's gonna put that weight back on. Everyone has a set point. That set point's ran off your body weight, so your muscular system, your central nervous system, your respiratory system is kind of operating off of what your body's used to weighing. It wants that constant state of homeostasis. So even though you've lost a little bit of weight, it's gonna wanna go back up to that weight, because that's what's used to fighting it. And so you wanna get yourself on a program or a plan that's dialed in for your lifestyle, your goals, your body type, all those different things. And that also is progressive, so that you're checking in with the coach every week, every 2 weeks, and they're adjusting your calories, your macros, your training frequency, your training intensity, and all those different things. And so there's a lot of levels to that, but that's where getting with a high-level coach and trainer can really make a huge difference for you. And then you learn what you're doing. And then once you learn that playbook, you can start to administer some of that stuff yourself and be successful and really learn the lifestyle. But I give you a lot of credit for taking those steps, but there's levels to this. And so, you know, you're in a room of coaches and athletes that you can learn a lot from. So my suggestion would be to talk to some of the folks in here and take that next step. Business card? Yes, there you go.
Hey, Joanne Norwood, IFBB Pro, also Masters Olympian. So, can you share, I've been doing this for 10 years now, so I've done 20-something for shows, but every year you'll see that one person that wants to do like 15 shows in a year.
We love
you know,
that.
and they get hooked. They get hooked, like the next I'm gonna get it, the next I'm gonna get it. So can you share like how that impacts the athlete long term? Because you discussed about how to pace yourself and everything.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is a very stressful sport.
Yes.
So to put your body through that, you know, week in and week out, doing a half a dozen, 10 shows, more shows than that. I mean, obviously that can be problematic long-term for you. Maintaining that level of conditioning, let's all be very honest, is not healthy for you, right? Your body needs body fat for all the hormonal and brain function reasons. So, I mean, that's a situation to definitely, look into and consider not doing. We don't suggest that. And the other issue is the results typically not going to change. If you're doing that many shows in a season, and if you're not even having an off season and coming back every year and doing the same thing, not only are you're not bringing the same physique, realistically, you're bringing a worse physique. Because, I mean, as you're maintaining that low level of body fat, at some point, you're going to start to eat away at your muscle. And you're going to come in flatter, you're not going to have the density or the shape that you need. It's not a good thing. And honestly, now I'm not a promoter, but to speak for Serge or Tim or the Garys out there, that's not what we're looking for. And, I mean, we all have our own brand. That's another conversation, but that's not the brand you're going for here. You got to be mindful of that. But, to each their own, and, you hope that person is staying healthy and checking those other boxes, but that's definitely not the approach that you want to take. And especially if you're getting feedback from Becky or Serge or somebody saying, hey, listen, your glutes aren't developed enough. And you come back to the same show and it's week in and week out, and it's like, hey, we keep telling you the same thing. And you have to realize this, especially as top level pros, like we know who you are. We've judged you. You have a brand. We know what your strengths are. We know what your weaknesses are. You keep bringing the same thing. Honestly, we start to get a little irritated. And sometimes that type of athlete will come up and want a different answer. It's like, I've already told you 5 times. Like this hasn't changed. Not like overnight you develop glutes or your shoulders have gotten wider. That's really just the reality of that situation. That's definitely not the approach that you want to take to this. And you got to find balance and enjoy the off season too. That's super important.
The only time I think you can do 2, 3, 4 shows in a row is like if you get judges' feedback, you're not in shape enough, so you get more, then you get more, then you get the feedback, okay, keep going, you need to get more tight, keep going. And then when you hit that one spot and you're right on the top, after that, you might be able to hold it 2, 3 weeks, and then you can see it like, okay, now you're tired. That's it.
Yeah. We see that, it's like, all right, this one pushed too far, too long, his body's not responding. And, you have to be mindful of the coaches too, because obviously some of them push too hard and want their athletes to do all these shows, and that's another conversation. But I'll say in front of some of the coaches, who did that? I'll say that in front of some of the coaches. These athletes, should they go on and do this other show? And to Serge's point, like, hey, listen, you're right there, like, absolutely, but, are you going to enjoy doing it? Is your life set up for it? Are you financially ready to do those things? And if you're not in a position to do that, it's going to add more stress to your life. chasing that next show might not be the right thing for you to do. Or if you talk to an athlete, especially on the developmental side, and going back to like a bikini, love our bikini athletes, right? But going back to the bikini athletes, when you see that they're underdeveloped, and they're like, oh, well, I was gonna do this next show and this next show, and it's like, okay, like you can, and if you're in a healthy place and you want to, and you're going to enjoy it, do it. I'm all for that. You're gonna get the same response.
Yeah.
Because you're underdeveloped and you're not ready to win the overall at this show. So as long as you know that, the coach is looking at me kind of sideways, like, are you not gonna tell him this? Because this is the reality of this, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna bring an underdeveloped physique, and that's okay. Enjoy that. I always tell people, do 2 to 3 shows. Get your stage presence, enjoy that process. But don't think you're gonna show up looking like, Laura Lee next week, because that's just not gonna happen for you. You need to take that off season.
And it can be tough, when you're just right at the cusp of, winning a show or turning pro. I always have a conversation with the athlete, like, where are you at? Where's your head at? How's your health?
Yeah.
Because they'll typically ask. There's some that are perennial, like bridesmaids. They're second place, and they really want to get that qualification. And you can see almost the look in their face. So I always ask them, like, how are you feeling? How are you doing?
Right.
And some of them, there's a tipping point.
You see they're about to melt.
Yes, and some of them are like, honestly, I've about had it. Like, I don't feel well. My mindset is not there. And that's the most important to consider, because I feel like when that snaps, if either your mental or physical health goes, you go too far, is a long road back.
Yeah, and you want to find balance and enjoy the process. When you push that hard for too long, those are the folks that end up crumbling mentally, psychologically, and they're online bitching about things and this and that. It's like, you let this own you. You didn't take ownership of this process. And you might have had the wrong people in your corner, the wrong people telling you a backwards message that wasn't necessarily true. Yeah. And you guys got to be objective and check that. And sometimes that's what we're here for. Casey, we've had serious conversations. I have a lot of athletes, message me, like I was telling the other group, this is the truth story. We have no skin in the game. We don't have a horse in the race. We want to see you all do well. We genuinely mean that. We want to see you all do well and win. We're going to give you honest feedback. And 9 times out of 10, if it's feedback you don't want to hear, it's because you're lying to yourself. Or someone is lying to you. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay? What was your question?
Back to judges, how important is it to go in front of different or the same judges?
That's a good question. I think we want to see you take our feedback and listen to it and get better. And when you don't, but if you're an athlete and we're like, hey, listen, you were right there, you just need to be a little bit more conditioned, or if it's a posing thing, presentation thing, whatever it is, and you come back in 2 weeks and you nail it, hey, that's going to help. Now, if, again, you happen to nail it and Sid Gillen shows up, that's just how it goes. And that happens sometimes, and that legitimately, that will happen. We'll give feedback to somebody, hey, listen, you got to come in a little bit sharper, work on this, don't do that, and they do it, but there's still a better athlete there. They're like, but I did this. Like, yeah, you did. Proud of you. You look great. Like, you improved without a doubt. She still looks better. I mean, that's the game. So 100%. Getting in front of different judges, I think there's a benefit to that because you're going to get a different feedback. And you're going to get different objective information if you're really taking it that way. But the judges is going to be the judging. I don't know that that's necessarily like a strategic move or not. Now, if you are getting ready for the Masters Olympia, and you know that Sandy's going to be your head judge, or Steve's going to be your judge, or Tyler, or one of us, you're like, hey, I want to get in front of them before I do this next show or my goal show. That makes sense, without a doubt, because then you're going to get that person's feedback. Or doing some of these shows before leading into the Olympia or into a pro qualifier, that without a doubt makes 100% sense. But picking random shows and kind of getting different in front of judges, I think that would more lead to what Serge was talking about on the experience side of things. And I do always tell people, like he was saying, make it an experience. I mean, there's some shows that are just a lot of fun and a good time. There are other shows that are good shows, but they're not as much of an experience. What are you going for? What's the experience that you want? If it is getting in front of a certain judge, that's okay. If it's having more of a genuine fun time and a bigger experience, that's a different thing. You might have a different judge there.
As a pro masters athlete, do you foresee pro bodybuilding masters gaining momentum? Because we have a lot of IFBB Pro shows in our area, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, but they all exclude bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So do you see that gaining any momentum, or is it just select shows throughout? the world, the life.
I think in South Florida, you have a lot, Tim puts a lot of shows, it's all divisions. So I think you just have to look up through the schedule in different states. If it's not in your area, I think you should just go down south a little more and hit the great shows. Like he said, they're one of the best shows.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Serge makes a good point. There's definitely opportunities out there. But to go further with that, I think, in talking to Tyler, obviously he's always working tirelessly to a fault to try to improve things and add more opportunity. And I know the Masters is definitely a big focus, obviously, with the Masters Olympia and everything else going on. And there's a huge number of Masters athletes is the reality of it. And, we want to cater to that as much as we can. So finding ways, on the business side to allow for that to happen for promoters like Serge and Tim and the other ones out there, to allow for that is really, really important. And so it's, taking a step back and looking at the model as a whole and figuring out how we can do that. And I know that's something that they're putting a lot of effort in. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about picking the right show? I'm gonna use myself as an example because sometimes I'm being too diagnosed self-featured. Sometimes we think ourselves better than we should. And we jump in shows that we probably shouldn't.
Exactly.
Right.
How are you most fit?
Yeah. It's like the level of the show,
Yeah.
just being realistic with yourself. I'm gonna tell you guys, I made it to the Olympia when Tyler told me, you keep picking the wrong shows. That's what he told me at the Tampa Pro. I said, y'all say in Masters? He said, no. You need to be open, but you keep picking the wrong shows, Steve. And I said, okay. Can you talk about that?
No, you bring up a great point. And
I'll say, like my own example, I was not a top pro, competitive, but I did well in some, like the Toronto Pro, things like that. But for me to do like the New York Pro, like the big ones, like Tampa, New York, Pittsburgh, those shows, Chicago, they're very, very competitive, where you're getting like the top 6 of the Olympia, like I think in Germany. They're doing, someone's there at that show. You have to be mindful of really where are you at, and what is your level, and what is your goal out of the show. I did the New York Pro my last year when I retired, and my coach even asked me, he's like, what is your goal here? Because he just wanted to make sure, because I was not going to place well, I was not going to do well. I was like, well, I just want to go with my friends, and it's I haven't done it in a while, I just really want to do it. He's like, as long as we're going in with that mindset, we can do this. But what is your goal? Because he was always very honest with me that, let's challenge you, but not overwhelm you. Like, I'm not going to drop you in a show where you have no chance. And I think that's where it comes to picking shows. Like, you want to pick a show where you think you might be competitive. And for newer pros, or say some that are like lesser developed, like myself, doing smaller shows was better. It was more even playing field. I wasn't going to get blown out of the water by Olympians, things like that. So there is, if you look at the lineups, I think that's one place to start. Like, who's doing these shows? And if it's like an Olympia lineup, it's highly competitive. It's heavily attended.
right.
That's one thing I started with for myself. What would you add to that?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you have to be strategic, and depending upon who you are, where you are in your journey. If you're somebody who's, vying for an Olympia spot, that's a different person that is, a newer pro, or maybe a Masters pro, just going for the experience and want to enjoy what they're doing. Okay, if you want to have a great experience, there are certain shows that you're going to have a blast at. Again, I continue to use Tim Gardner, but he goes all out on every little detail for his shows. Whether you get a placement or not is a whole other conversation, but you're going to have an absolutely great time. There's no two ways about that. Everything is going to be first rate. There are other pro shows that are smaller venues. You're not getting the swag bag. You're not going to be at this place. You're not going to be at a fun, preeminent city and all the different things that go with that. But you're going to be very competitive, and you may win that, Olympia qualification. So those are two different things. And again, I mean, for those who have ever spoken to Tyler Mannion, he's objective. There's no doubt about that. He will give you the truth. But that's what you come to us for. So if you're making plans, you're getting ready to, start your competitive season, it's like, okay, it's like a business plan. What's the goal? What's the end game here? And then you reverse engineer that. And that's always the best way to go about it, no matter who you are.
question. Jamie, shameless plug here. I edit Pose and Music. Just turned pro last August. Question is, how, I'll be in classic physique, how is that judged? Is it like 40 plus, all open 40 plus? Or is height and weight like qualifying you to it? How is that done?
It's by age, once you're a pro. You still have to meet the requirements, like the
Okay.
height and weight requirements on the pro level, but once you're in the master's pro, right, it's just by age. It's not, there's
So
not any
like
of
45, all y'all.
You'll be 45, but you could be standing next to someone who's 5'5", next to
Yes.
someone who's
Right.
6'3". But
Okay.
they still have to hit their weight cap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's just weight range in that age.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Got like 5 minutes left. We're getting the cue card over here from our intern. Intern, what's your name?
Jonathan?
Jonathan, you gotta ask one question. Any other questions, you guys, gals? And like we said in the other, seminars and breakouts, I mean, if you guys have one-off questions, don't be afraid to pull us aside. And, if there's something else you want to ask, something you want to get into it, and even, reach out to us on social media, whatever's easier for you. We'll do our best to get back to you. And genuinely, we want to see you all do as well as you can and enjoy this process.
And I think to finish your question is if you're a top level pro, I think you should be with the top, competing in the top level, like at the best shows. I think that would be the right thing.
Yeah. There's just a progression to get there, right?
But I think it's even going further than that, being strategic, like Tyler said. I mean, pick the right show to get your qualification,
Yep.
and then once you get your qualification, say, hey, you know what, I'm going to set my sights on this here. Maybe I am going to do the Chicago Pro, get in the mix, see what this looks like. You know what I mean? Versus not doing that, and then running into the Olympia, I'm like, oh shit, what happened? And that happens. That happens.
It's not a question, it's more a comment. I see you on social media. My name is Sandy. I'm a figure competitor on my way to pro. But I see you on the Bikini Wellness Figure little group chat, giving back feedback, and I just love that. You're a part of it, and you give such great feedback. I just wanted to comment that I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. And yes,
Means
the
a lot.
Facebook is, and I know a lot of people think Facebook is like archaic, but there are great groups out there
I
that
agree.
you can join. Like there are thousands of girls, and this one that's like bikini.
I learned so
figure,
much.
wellness, whatever it is. There's
Yeah.
a couple bodybuilding ones, and there can be some squirrely information out there too. So
Yes, I
I say
agree.
take some of it with a grain of salt, but we all love this sport, right? All of us love this sport, and we are here because we want to give back to you from everything we've gotten. And I think that's the reason we give you guys feedback is don't make the mistakes we made, learn from us, and we want to help you in your journey. So that's another good tool. So find, forums like that you can be a part of. There's lots of great camaraderie and lots of great information. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you, for sure.
Anything for Surgeon Eye?
She doesn't follow us.
Girls only.
Thank you for being here.
We're here for you guys.
Well done.
Anything you guys need? Jack is always on Instagram, I'm on Instagram.
Jack's got several messages from me like, hey, I'm in full, what am I doing wrong?
Right. It's on Facebook, apparently.
Well, Facebook has the good groups though. Like you can get in a group like that and just, that one's so active. People post everything from newbies to pros to just all sorts of questions.
And they let you be anonymous, so if
Yes.
you're feeling like awkward, like posting who you are or in fear of judgment, like they allow you to anonymously post your question and it stays anonymous, and everyone can give you their input on it. I learned so much, and like some of the questions I forgot that I had, that it'll be asked, and it's like, oh, that's awesome.
I'm in there to keep
Yep,
like a pulse
absolutely.
on
Yeah,
the athletes too. Like there's a lot of times I just look and I won't comment, but if a question comes up enough, I'll mention it. Like, hey, people really think this is a thing. This is a myth that's going on. Like one of them, they think the natural criteria is different than not the open criteria. It's like, where did that come from? And that just spread like wildfire, but I can see that and try to set it straight, so.
You do great. Fit models are masters. I swear to God, masters.
Jonathan, do we have time for this question? Say no. Jonathan, took your time to step, you sat down. You sat down. What was the
Sure it
question?
will be
How-
eventually.
I know a fit model for masters is, you know, like you say, muscle gets denser, skin gets thinner. Criteria going to be exactly the same, or will there be a little bit of leeway for the older ladies wanting to do fit?
If I can answer that, I don't
Please.
even know what the plans are for fit model and masters, but the criteria is always the same. It's just in masters, sometimes all we have to judge are, you know, athletes who are a little harder and a little more muscular. It's not that that's the criteria, but that's all we can pick from.
Yeah.
So I would say regardless of age, like the bikini criteria, it doesn't matter if you're 60 plus. You still want that look.
Right.
And whoever's closest to it. So that will still be the criteria, it's just.
It's a good question.
This is a fair question.
It was a
Fair.
good question.
Fair. All right. Well, that wraps it up, guys. Really appreciate you guys coming out.